all disclaimers all the time. This is a new presentation. It is shorter than I'm used to, a shorter time frame than I'm used to filling. It's a new set of topics for me that I'm very excited about, and I'm really sure that I could talk about it for a few hours. So I'm going to talk fast. I'm going to put the slides online, and I'm really, really happy to talk about any of this virtually or in reality at any time. So yes, Code for a Better World, open source, Drupal, and government. I'm going to be speaking at a government ICT event in London in a few weeks, and I am keynoting PHP World in Washington, D.C., which, and this is my first stab at some things that I've been thinking about recently that I think are relevant to very, very highly relevant to open source and things that we have in common with government. In that, for example, I think that we all honestly want a better world. I would like to thank my employer at this point for sending me here today. I'm really thrilled to be back in Australia, and I'm hoping to make it to Drupal South next year too. Yeah, that would be cool. So listen, so Drupal's really different to Symfony and to Zend and to Joomla and to Typo 3 and to all sorts of other Sitecore and all sorts of other projects. The fundamental design decision in Drupal, can anyone give me 2 sentences what makes us completely different from any other project of significant complexity? Community. That's good, and we are different, but the design decision that went into it is that we have put all of the power of all of that complexity into the UI. You don't need to be a coder to communicate with Drupal and to make very, very sophisticated data models and very, very advanced ways of communicating and mixing data, and Drupal 8 is going to be even more so. So this is about empowerment. And I was talking with Angie Byron at the United Nations, who had this to say. Let's see, it should come through now. That's God, wait. Okay, let's go back, I can do this. See, not my computer, right? So,
I think the real power of Drupal and what I get excited about in that sort of work is, essentially what we do as Drupal developers is we make really abstract, complicated, programming concepts accessible to non-developers. When we write things like the views module, you can do very sophisticated queries and charts and maps and all kinds of things just by clicking a few buttons without having to understand all the code that comes underneath it. So what I get really excited about is the idea that Drupal, and particularly Drupal 8, could be this vehicle through which we create really easily accessible, things that could be piped through a mobile application or usable on the internet, and used as a tool to help those people who are on the front lines trying to make the world a better place, and we can build technologies to enable that.
Nice, right? So the ultimate example, I think, or a very fundamental example of the points that I believe are important to good digital government are kind of summed up pretty well in this We the People application. Hey, so digital government, successful digital government, transparency, participation, collaboration, innovation, right? In the United States, there's been a constitutional right to petition your government to change the laws of the land since the country was created, since not the Declaration of Independence, but shortly thereafter with the Constitution. But how do you really do that? And how do you do that in a country as, almost as large as Australia, with very, very limited technologies? It's very, very difficult, collecting piles of paper, sending them around the country. Well, here we have open source software making digital infrastructure that allows the citizens of the country, famously, to petition the president to build a national Death Star. Now, what was nice, so this did actually initiate change in the United States. For one, they made the number of signatures needed on a petition before the White House would respond has been, I think it's now 100,000 and not 30,000. The White House's response to this petition, however, was, this is not the petition response you're looking for. and went on, it did a very detailed analysis of why they can't do a national Death Star, and it's actually worth looking up. But hey, this is Drupal, and this is the United States government working in public. This piece of government infrastructure, participation, transparency infrastructure, is on GitHub, okay? That's amazing, all right? How many of you here, I have calculated that I have 42 seconds per slide, so no wasting time. How many people here work for government departments, NGOs, agencies, etc., public bodies? And how many of you are service providers who work with or would like to work with these people? How many technical, how many people consider yourself technical? Oh, cool, okay. So we can pretty much geek out today, that's nice. Listen, so I come from the Drupal trenches. That in Portland, that's called hipster camouflage. I come from the Drupal trenches. I worked as, I guess nowadays we'd call it a Drupal site builder. I've been in Drupal since about 2005. And I've been at Acquia since 2008. My job now is in Acquia marketing. I have a really, in a very privileged position to talk with governments, business people, and Drupal service providers about the intersection between how open source philosophy becomes practice and improves your ability to do business or to effect change or what have you. My most active stream is the Acquia.com podcast. There's a sub-series in there that I'm getting really excited about. It has its own landing page. It's Jam's Virtual Drupal Camp. It's a lot of fun. If any of you want to present on it, we can talk about that. I'm on Twitter and Instagram, and pretty much everything is Horn Cologne. Feel free to reach out to me. So I've already called this out, but I was looking for a definition of, what are some hallmarks of successful digital government, and I've decided that we could talk about collaboration, transparency, participation, and innovation, and I think each of these has different dimensions to it, and you can interpret it in different ways. And what I want to go do is very, very quickly go through what I mean about what I mean here, what open source, how I define open source, and how it boils down into some practical expressions of these four things, and all in the next 15 minutes. So look, I've been doing some similar talks, and if you invite me to your conference, I can talk for a couple hours about what successful business needs and how you can derive these things from the open source definition and from Drupal's existence and practices. Government needs these too. Government needs to be innovative today and save money, of course. But there's some interesting parallels here. So that's another talk, another set of topics that I've thought about a lot. So I contend that using Drupal, using open source software, you get these, and you can, then successfully practice digital government. But let's talk about what open source is for a second. The open source definition is derived from the free software definition by Richard Stallman. Brian Behlendorf wrote this thing called the open source definition, which is 9 points, which are quite beautifully written. In practice, what we're talking about is software that you can use it. You can use it for anything, and you can use it forever. And it happens to come with a 0 price tag. But that means that you're in control of what you use. It means nobody can take it away, all right? And this slide is in itself another hour-long talk. You're free. So we talk about freedoms. We talk about freedoms with free software, and in open source software, the freedoms that you get are much more important than the fact that you could say that this 0 price tag means it's free. You're free to look at the code, all right? You're free to make informed decisions. This is very, very important for risk mitigation, okay? You're free to understand what you're using. Since you understand it, and you're empowered geeks, okay, you're free to make it exactly the tool that you need. All right? And this becomes a virtuous circle when we're free to share this with our peers, and when we're free to make improvements once and give those back and rely on all of our colleagues and peers to also be improving this and putting it back so that we never have to fix the same thing twice. Evil Dries, the Evil Dries Twitter account misquoted a presentation of mine once, and I said, my fix bugs are your fix bugs, and Evil Dries tweeted, Jam says, Horn Cologne says, I have bugs, fix them. But, so Wi-Fi, this Wi-Fi wants to me to sign in here. Let's turn that off again. I just put that in there just in case we couldn't see that on my last slide, but it was look fine. So who's heard of Lawrence Lessig? He invented Creative Commons, among other things. He's a Harvard professor. He's a genius. He's become very, very politically active in the United States. This book, The Outsider's Guide to Fixing the Republic, is fairly interesting, even if you're not interested in United States politics, especially for the introduction, where he talks about people like the Tea Party and people like the Occupy Wall Street movement defining themselves as open source political parties. What's the most successful open source community in the world with the most active contributors and, a dominant technology on the web? We've been this incredible social experiment for the last more than a decade, and other people are noticing that our models of governance and practice really, really work. In any case, here's a key sentence. Open source provides the fastest possible rate of improvement for ideas, and this is important to keep in mind. Here's another 20 or 30-minute slide that I can talk about. I want you to absorb this, and then we'll go back over it another day. Fundamentally, every IT project has costs associated with it, and so you should never, ever talk with anybody about open source being free, right? Because you're setting very bad expectations. The fact that you don't pay a license fee means that your chain of investment is completely different, okay? And you can really put money where you need it and when you need it, and you can train your own people, you can develop your own features. There's no vendor lock-in. There are thousands of Drupal shops. I was talking with someone today who was saying that there are not very many Sitecore vendors in Australia, so you're kind of stuck with who you got. And you can stay on the cutting edge. You can be as innovative as you are capable of being because you're not on anyone else's roadmap, and you can invest in the stuff that you need. Very, very briefly. And so because, right, all of us developers have the open access to use and study and modify and share all this software, right? Drupal and Drupal's grown into this incredibly powerful community of practitioners, and we have some economies of scale that not many other projects have. So, when we say that there are, okay, look, Drupal 7 modules that work with Drupal 7 right now, how many do I? Maybe 8,500, 9,000. Broad community, yes, so there are 1 million members on Drupal.org. Don't tell anybody that. There are maybe 80 to 150,000 active members on Drupal.org, but oh my God, 150,000 people and 20,000 active developers. That is a heck of a team to hire. Anytime you hire a Drupal professional, right, you are hiring 12, 14 years of work, right, millions of hours of coding come for free at minute zero of your project. That's really, really powerful. So, look, collaboration, transparency, participation, innovation. I say Drupal is delivering all this for real in the trenches right now. I want to go through some examples. Collaboration. So look, open source software is ideal for collaboration. I did a 6-second interview with Pam in Wellington, and she said, the issue queue's already solved half my problems, right? That's amazing. We're always working together, and we're free to use all these millions of hours of coding that have been done for us by our peers. It's really fantastic. So look, here's another kind of collaboration, though. The New York Public Transit Authority has this Drupal site. So they used to have their emergency alert site set up as a static site, and when there were important emergencies, people would email them. Even their own employees would email in, and then the content editors would open up the page and put in the words, and then, FTP the page back up. This Drupal website for emergency response for this major public transit system has a workflow where anyone who's got the right uploads the newest data, it gets approved and published in 2 steps. So that's an amazing ability to collaborate on helping people and keeping a city running. The example we talk about is this Drupal site helped a lot of people during the Hurricane Sandy in New York City. The Said Business School is at University of Oxford. They've got a suite of Drupal sites, and they're one of the newest colleges at Oxford, and they've got a very modern take on what education should be. And they have an incredible collaboration site called GoTo, where they have this 2-way mentoring learning system where they have alumni helping current students and current students helping on real-world projects. And so this is a collaboration platform built on Drupal. I'm trying to give different examples of what these words could mean and Drupal context that we've got. So transparency is interesting. And one of my favorite Drupalists, Jeff Eaton, pointed out that quality is a common outcome of transparency. The bad dies or the bad gets fixed. Okay? So in this regard, Drupal code repositories are very Darwinian. If a module is used on 15,000 sites and the alternate is used, the next choice is used on 350 sites, it's clear that one is worth investing in, one is working better for more people. If you want to go write your own module, that's fine. You'll probably be doing yourself and everyone else more service if you invest in the leading technology, if it's conceivable that it would also do what you envision for this. So, transparency. There's no, it would be very, very hard for people to slip a dangerous code into Drupal.org for any amount of time because we have this continuous system of peer review, right? This transparency lets us make very, very well-informed group decisions about quality and security of our code. And this is an open source principle that's been acknowledged everywhere from the US Department of Defense, very, very publicly. That's a very interesting old document to read. And through the pharmaceutical industry, through all sorts of very, very legally challenging industries now are adopting open source. The New York Stock Exchange uses Drupal. I mean, people who are concerned about things are using it, okay? And I can say, hey, NASA uses Drupal, and Pfizer uses Drupal, and Al Jazeera uses Drupal, and that's secure enough for me, and that's fine. But if you don't trust that decision because you can study the code, you can go and make your own decisions about it. And that's highly, highly empowering. The Norwegian Society of Accountants, a hotbed for radical thinking, made a public submission to a public tender process for redefining the cash register, right, the till standard for Norway. And I mean, when you are government defining what a till should be, a lot of what you're worried about is accuracy and collecting as much tax as you're supposed to, right? Fraud mitigation. The Norwegian Society of Accountants made a public submission to the government that said the only way that you can guarantee that the tills are auditable is if they use open source software. Now, I would like this message to get through to the people who permit corporations like Diebold to make voting machines in the United States, but one step at a time. At least we've got Norwegian cash registers, right? IT dashboard. The code to display budget information broken down as graphs, broken down by department, time frames, broken down to individual managers, people responsible for different bits of money. The code for this has been open source. It's available. It's a fantastic tool for governmental transparency. It's really, really exciting, a really, really useful tool. It's really, I think, a sign of trust when a government is willing to show us this much information, and I would like to see it a lot more. This is a cool slide, and it's supposed to represent how much information all of you government departments generate and how much is probably available on the web as content, right? It's been estimated that if you could actually, all of the data that you generate onto the web, that there would be trillions of dollars more economic value to be extracted from it for government and industry just by being able to use it. So I want to do an especially passionate shout out to the DCAN distribution, and this has feature parity with a Python application called CCAN, which is for making open data portals, but it is Drupal. So everything that you can do with Drupal in terms of integrating other systems, content types, taxonomies, being web aware, it's fully integrated into being Drupal, and it's an incredibly powerful tool for open data portals. It is being used at the open data portal of where I live in Cologne and the city down the road in Bonn. Highly surprising, fantastic to see that the Germans being innovative. It's being used at the White House, it's being used all around the world. DCAN is really, really, really empowering for governments. There is, in terms of participation, there is a patent commenting system in use called peer-to-patent, which is really, really powerful, and many patent systems around the world need revising and revision, and public, they need some sunlight in there to clean them up. And I think that that kind of a tool could be very, very valuable. The Drupal community built this bit of open source infrastructure to help tornado victims in Oklahoma in a 24-hour sprint at DrupalCon Portland. And it's incredible how, in terms of participation, some open source people can have an idea and build this, and it becomes essentially a parallel governmental infrastructure, helping when a government is overwhelmed and needs, we're able to just jump in and make real change in the real world with the stuff we do on our screens. It's crazy. This is a clear example of participation. This also allows, the DCAN also allows to build, reporting systems where you can say, hey, the street light's out on my block, or, these parks are good, or, making collaborative open data portals together. Innovation, I want to talk a little bit less about specific examples and a little bit more in theory. There's an old book that predicted what happened, that has now happened with open source, called Democratizing Innovation. I highly recommend it. It's a fascinating read to this day. Eric von Hippel talks about how in the old world, manufacturers made something and essentially broadcast it in one direction to consumers who took it and used it. Over time, certain consumers would start hacking and modifying and trying to change things to make them the devices that they actually needed. But there was no real communication. So you have a paradigm of manufacturer broadcasting to consumer. And you have the consumers then starting to turn themselves into manufacturers to get the tools that they need. And of course, open source software, well, we're the users, and we're also the manufacturers of our software. So we have this unbelievable power to make tools that are exactly what we need. And, in terms of innovation, we are web professionals on the front lines of doing business, of taking care of clients, of making new features for, the next Twitter and the next Pinterest and the next whatever the thing is going to come out. The Drupal community is very, very good at making the new integrations, the new modules very, very, very quickly, because we are both manufacturer and user. I highly, highly recommend this book. And this happens in the real world. Blink Reaction in New Jersey, shout out to the video, built the open data portal for the New York Public Transit Authority, which just, here's the data. See what happens. 77 apps are available that use that open data portal, and it hasn't been online that long. And I think that's an astonishing proof point that open data is creating value. It's improving people's lives. It's probably paying some people's bills. And it was all there before, but now we're actually able to grab it and use it. I contend that the size of the Drupal community and the activity of the Drupal community gives us more advantages because there are more of us, as I said, on the front lines of all of this. So I'm hoping that in a very, very, very brief span of time that I've been able to prove that Drupal is delivering this kind of stuff. And if you will permit me to go a couple minutes over time, I want to close with, I think, 2 or 3 examples from proprietary or open source. Doesn't matter. May I do that? Okay. If you're a government, you've heard this one. If you're a government, what you want to do is make the world a better place. I think that's your fundamental mode of operation. Traditionally, if I have 100 money to spend on making the world a better place, I can happily build a bridge across a river, right? And then, commerce will be increased and travel times will be reduced, and there's some economic stimulus to be had from that and some quality of life to be had from that. Good. That's 100 money spent, and now I have some maybe even measurable improvement. I may choose to spend 100 money on vaccination. Maybe in the third world, maybe in poorer regions of my own country. I spend 100 money on vaccination against disease. This allows more children to grow up, more people to become educated, more economic power, creativity in my economy, or the developing country that I'm supporting. The world is measurably a better place. I've spent 100 money. I may, as a government, decide that my 100 money is best spent bombing the crap out of some place. This is not my style. It happens, okay? And the world is different, and 100 money is spent. If you build government infrastructure with open source software, okay? If I spend 100 money to build We the People, or the IT dashboard, or some of the other applications, the MTA Open Data Portal, okay? Well, I've built that code, and now anyone else, any other government can use that again. I've spent 100 money, but it can be used N times. And as soon as it's downloaded again, it's twice as in a way, it's twice as valuable. And it also becomes more valuable because the more people that use your open source software, the more of it there is, and the more secure it is, and the faster it is, and the more features it has. It becomes more valuable the more you use it. So you have this power as a government to spend once and achieve an incredible amount of change in the world if you build this open source infrastructure and then give it back. So in this case, open source really makes a difference compared to proprietary software. In the United States, there's a saying in the restaurant business, you gotta own the bricks. If you open up a place that you're renting, you do really well. And next year, the landlord comes along, it's like, I love your spaghetti, I'm doubling your rent. As a restaurant, location is everything, right? And you're screwed. This is kind of like, hey, that piece of, name your proprietary software company here, software is not really making us enough money, and we don't care that you've invested 6 years of work and your life savings and your vision in this. We're sunsetting it at the end of the year. But because we're very nice, we'll let you migrate to the next version. The license fee is 50% more, but that's okay, right? It's not okay. I don't want my government building citizen services and infrastructure on stuff it doesn't own and is not in control of. I want my government, I want my own business, my time, my investment, my vision, I want that built on something that I definitively own and control, okay? Open source software gives me that. So you gotta own the bricks. Thank you. I'll be here all day. Don't forget to tip your waitresses.